When an avoidant partner walks away, most people immediately try to chase, explain, or fight to get them back. But the wise words of Albert Einstein remind us, we cannot solve our problems with the same thinking we used when we created them. If you've ever tried to win back an avoidant ex, you know exactly what I'm talking about. Each text you send, each explanation you give, feels like shouting into the wind. The harder you try, the further away they drift, leaving you feeling powerless and confused. Yet, as Maya Angelou famously said, when someone shows you who they are, believe them the first time. One of the biggest mistakes people make with avoidant exes is ignoring the reality staring them in the face. We convince ourselves that their distance means uncertainty. Their silence means they're thinking about returning. But the truth is simpler. They're comfortable living at arm's length, protected by walls they've built brick by brick. Another major mistake is giving away your power through constant reassurance. Buddha wisely taught that you yourself, as much as anybody in the entire universe, deserve your love and affection. Yet, how often do we abandon ourselves to soothe an avoidant ex's insecurities? How many times do we devalue our worth to make someone else comfortable in their distance? You cannot heal the wounds of a partner determined to stay wounded. Then comes the temptation to play emotional detective. But remember Shakespeare's wisdom. Expectation is the root of all heartache. When you obsessively analyze your avoidant ex's every action, looking for hidden meanings or signs of regret, you trap yourself in a cycle of disappointment. You're not healing. You're prolonging your suffering, holding yourself hostage to someone else's uncertainty. The legendary Bruce Lee once said, "Be water, my friend." Yet another common mistake is to become rigid, fixating on one particular outcome. You may tell yourself that you must get closure or hear an apology to move forward. But true power comes from adaptability, from learning to flow beyond the stagnant waters of the past relationship, embracing the freedom that comes when you stop fighting against their resistance. A painful but crucial mistake is believing their emotional unavailability is a reflection of your value. Oprah Winfrey reminds us, you teach people how to treat you. Accepting breadcrumbs from someone avoidant is not love, it's self-abandonment. Every time you accept less, you reinforce the belief that your needs don't matter. You deserve love that is clear, consistent and committed, not conditional or cautious. Then there's the mistake of attempting to evoke jealousy or regret. Stoic philosopher Seneca warned, anger, if not restrained, is frequently more hurtful to us than the injury that provokes it. Trying to trigger an emotional response by flaunting new connections or feigning indifference doesn't make you powerful. It reveals your emotional dependency. Real strength is rooted in authenticity, not manipulation. Perhaps the biggest mistake is waiting indefinitely for an avoidant partner to change. Leonardo da Vinci taught us, "It has long since come to my attention that people of accomplishment rarely sit back and let things happen to them. They go out and happen to things." When you pause your life waiting for someone to choose you, you're no longer living. You're existing in their shadow, surrendering your power to their indecision. This is your wake-up call. You have the power to rewrite your story. Imagine stepping into a future where your value is not determined by someone's inability to see your worth. Imagine breaking free from the cycle of chasing, explaining, and settling. If you stay with me until the end of this video, I promise you'll uncover the transformative insights needed to break the avoidant pattern and reclaim your emotional freedom. So, let's make this commitment together. Type this mantra in the comments below. I choose my worth. Now hit that like button, subscribe and activate the notifications to join the Ace Wisdom community, where together we grow stronger, wiser and more empowered every day. Ace Wisdom presents the biggest mistakes people make with an avoidant ex. Mistake number 1. Trying to force a connection by chasing. The biggest mistake people make with an avoidant ex is chasing them, hoping that persistence will break down their walls. There's a powerful truth behind Lao Tzu's ancient wisdom: if you chase after something, it runs away. When you constantly reach out, sending texts, calling repeatedly, or pleading for another chance, you inadvertently trigger your ex's instinct to retreat even further into their emotional fortress. Understand this. The avoidant personality thrives on emotional independence. The more you push, the more suffocated they feel, causing them to withdraw further to maintain their sense of autonomy. You're not just losing their interest, you're actively reinforcing their perception that intimacy equals losing their freedom. This dynamic creates a toxic cycle of push and pull, leaving you exhausted and them increasingly distant. Moreover, chasing undermines your own self-respect and value. Marcus Aurelius, the great Stoic philosopher, reminded us, "You have power over your mind, not outside events." Yet when you chase an avoidant ex, you're handing control over your emotional well-being directly to them. You begin to measure your worth by their responses, or lack thereof, leading to anxiety, insecurity, and diminished self-esteem. Another aspect often overlooked is that chasing subtly communicates desperation rather than genuine love or affection. As Maya Angelou wisely said, "Never make someone a priority when all you are to them is an option." When you chase an avoidant partner, you signal that you're willing to tolerate emotional breadcrumbs and inconsistency. This doesn't inspire them to value you more. Instead, it gives them permission to continue keeping you at arm's length, knowing you'll be there regardless of their minimal effort. So what's the alternative? Step back. Reclaim your dignity by allowing space. Understand that genuine connections are not forced. They flow naturally. When you stop chasing, you're signaling strength, confidence, and self-respect. Only then can your avoidant ex begin to recognize what they've truly lost. Ultimately, releasing the urge to chase not only restores your peace, but positions you to attract relationships founded on mutual respect and genuine emotional availability. Mistake number 2. Believing you can fix or change them. Another major mistake is believing you have the power to fix or change your avoidant ex. Renowned poet Rumi cautioned us with profound clarity. "Yesterday I was clever, so I wanted to change the world. Today I'm wise, so I am changing myself." Yet many people invest enormous emotional energy into trying to heal or change their ex-partner, convinced that love, patience and reassurance can somehow dissolve their deeply rooted fears of intimacy. The reality, however, is starkly different. Avoidance is typically ingrained from early attachment wounds or life experiences far beyond your influence. You may find yourself thinking, "If I just show enough love, they'll open up," or "If I give them space and patience, they'll come around." But in truth, you're setting yourself up for frustration and disappointment. No amount of external effort can alter someone who isn't ready or willing to change themselves. The legendary author Paulo Coelho once wrote, "When someone leaves, it's because someone else is about to arrive." Ironically, your persistent attempts to fix an avoidant partner might cause you to miss opportunities for healthier, more fulfilling connections elsewhere. While you are stuck trying to repair someone who sees no need for repair, you're actively neglecting your own emotional growth and personal happiness. Furthermore, trying to fix your ex creates an imbalanced relationship dynamic, placing you in the role of rescuer rather than equal partner. As Carl Jung wisely noted, the meeting of two personalities is like the contact of two chemical substances. If there is any reaction, both are transformed. Healthy relationships transform both partners through mutual effort, growth, and vulnerability, not through one person tirelessly sacrificing their emotional well-being to change another. The solution? Accept them as they are, rather than how you wish them to be. Instead of focusing on fixing your ex, redirect that energy inward. Work on healing yourself, setting healthier boundaries, and recognizing that you deserve a relationship built on reciprocity, emotional availability, and mutual transformation. Only then will you find peace, clarity, and relationships aligned with your true worth. Mistake number 3. Taking their avoidance personally. One of the most painful mistakes you can make with an avoidant ex is believing their emotional distance is a direct reflection of your worth. The philosopher Epictetus taught us, it's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters. Yet many find themselves trapped in self-blame, internalizing rejection as proof of inadequacy or unworthiness. You mistakenly assume that if you were better, more attractive, or more lovable, they wouldn't have pulled away. Here's a truth that might surprise you. Avoidance isn't about you. It's about their internal struggle with closeness. It stems from deeply rooted fears of intimacy, vulnerability, and dependence. When an avoidant person pushes away or withdraws emotionally, they're responding to their own discomfort, not rejecting you personally. You may interpret their silence as judgment or disapproval, but in reality, it's their protective mechanism to maintain emotional safety. As Eleanor Roosevelt wisely reminded us, no one can make you feel inferior without your consent. Yet every time you interpret your ex's withdrawal as evidence of your inadequacy, you empower their avoidance to damage your self-esteem. You begin questioning your value, your attractiveness, your ability to maintain love. This self-doubt becomes a wound that festers, sabotaging future relationships and eroding your confidence over time. Taking their avoidance personally also traps you in a cycle of seeking validation externally, rather than recognizing your intrinsic worth. Psychologist Carl Rogers once stated, "The curious paradox is that when I accept myself just as I am, then I can change." By internalizing their avoidance as rejection, you prevent yourself from truly accepting who you are, limiting your capacity for growth, healing, and finding genuine connection with someone emotionally available. The solution lies in cultivating compassion for yourself and reframing their behavior as their issue, not yours. Recognize your worth independently of anyone else's behavior or approval. Remember that someone's inability to embrace closeness does not diminish your value. By detaching your sense of self-worth from their emotional limitations, you reclaim your power and open the path toward healthier, more fulfilling relationships. Mistake number 4. Using jealousy or mind games to win them back. Another critical mistake people make with an avoidant ex is resorting to jealousy, manipulation, or mind games, hoping these tactics will spark a reaction or trigger their ex's return. Sun Tzu famously said, "All warfare is based on deception, yet love is not war." And playing emotional games only deepens the damage rather than healing the relationship. You may think that making your ex jealous will awaken their interest, but with an avoidant partner, these tactics usually backfire spectacularly. When you attempt to evoke jealousy or appear indifferent to make them chase you, you're operating from insecurity rather than authenticity. Abraham Lincoln once wisely noted, "You cannot escape the responsibility of tomorrow by evading it today." In essence, mind games only temporarily distract you from the real emotional wounds, prolonging your healing process. Rather than making your ex appreciate you, these manipulations often reinforce their reasons for distancing themselves in the first place. Avoidant individuals typically respond to emotional games by retreating even further into their comfort zone, distance. Rather than chasing, your attempts to provoke jealousy or insecurity confirm to them that emotional closeness equals drama and vulnerability. Famous philosopher Friedrich Nietzsche warned, "Whoever fights monsters should see to it that in the process he does not become a monster." Trying to emotionally provoke your ex doesn't demonstrate strength or attractiveness. It diminishes your integrity, turning you into exactly what you're trying to escape. Emotionally unavailable and manipulative. Additionally, when you choose manipulation as your tool, you're no longer living authentically. Brené Brown, a respected researcher on vulnerability, emphasizes, "Authenticity is the daily practice of letting go of who we think we're supposed to be and embracing who we are." Emotional games force you into playing a role, disconnecting you from your true self and genuine emotions. Your avoidant ex may return temporarily out of insecurity, but the reunion will lack the authenticity and emotional connection you genuinely crave. Instead of playing games, commit to emotional honesty and genuine self-growth. Embrace vulnerability as strength, recognizing that true power lies in authentic expression, clear boundaries, and unwavering self-respect. By stepping away from manipulation, you become the type of person who naturally attracts and sustains relationships based on mutual trust, respect, and emotional maturity. Now you understand the biggest mistakes people make with an avoidant ex, and, more importantly, how you can reclaim your power and begin healing. As Albert Einstein wisely said, "Insanity is doing the same thing over and over and expecting different results." It's time to break free from cycles of chasing, waiting, and self-abandonment. Your future relationships deserve a healthier, empowered you. If this resonated with you, I encourage you to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and don't forget to comment our powerful mantra below. I choose my worth. Typing these words helps reinforce your commitment to yourself, serving as a daily reminder that your value isn't defined by anyone else's actions or inactions. Remember, every step you take toward self-respect moves you further from pain and closer to true happiness. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Until next time, stay empowered. Ace. Picture this for a moment. A man and a woman deeply in love, sharing laughter, dreams, and vulnerabilities. He gives his all, his time, his energy, his heart. But one day, without warning, she pulls away. Not with a fight, not with a dramatic goodbye, but with distance. Calls go unanswered. Texts turn into ghostly echoes, and suddenly, it feels like he never existed in her world. No explanation, no closure, just a cold, quiet void. At first, he blames himself. Maybe he was too much, maybe not enough. He replays every conversation, searching for the moment he lost her. But what if the real reason had nothing to do with him at all? What if she cared more than she let on, but ran anyway? The truth is, some people don't sabotage relationships because they don't care. They sabotage them because they do. This is the paradox of the avoidant ex, the one who claims to want love but runs from it the moment it gets too close. As Steve Jobs once said, you can't connect the dots looking forward, you can only connect them looking backward. Avoidants don't understand their own fear in the moment. They only see the pattern in hindsight. They crave intimacy, but fear being trapped, so they push away the very thing they desire. Psychologists call it avoidant attachment, but in real life, it feels like a never-ending cycle of hot and cold. They withdraw, creating space, expecting their partner to chase, because chasing means reassurance. But what happens when you stop running after them? When you refuse to play the game? That's when the power dynamic shifts. The legendary Bruce Lee once said, "Be like water. Instead of resisting, adapt. Instead of seeking validation from someone who keeps retreating, flow toward what truly fulfills you. If they cannot meet you where you stand, then perhaps they were never meant to. Their avoidance is not your burden to fix." You see, avoiding intimacy doesn't mean they don't feel love. It means they fear losing control. The moment they sense emotional closeness, their survival instinct kicks in, whispering, "Run before you get hurt." And so they run, not because they don't care, but because caring too much terrifies them. But here's the secret. The moment you stop chasing, they're forced to sit with their own fears. As Carl Jung put it, until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate. If an avoidant ex truly values you, your absence will make them confront what they've been running from. Not your pleas, not your patience, your absence. So, if you've ever been left confused by someone who once seemed all in but suddenly vanished, stay with me until the end of this video. We're about to break down why avoidant exes sabotage relationships, how to spot their patterns, and, most importantly, how to reclaim your power so you never have to suffer through this cycle again. Drop a comment below. I choose my peace. Let this be your mantra, your declaration that you will no longer chase someone afraid to embrace love. If this message resonates with you, support the Ace Wisdom family by subscribing and joining our community. Ace Wisdom presents Why Avoidant Exes Sabotage Relationships, Even When They Care. Avoidant exes sabotage relationships not because they don't care, but because deep down they equate intimacy with a loss of freedom. The closer someone gets, the more suffocated they feel. Love to them is not a safe space. It's a trap. As the legendary philosopher Jean-Paul Sartre once said, hell is other people. For avoidants, this isn't just a dramatic statement. It's their reality. They crave connection, but the moment it starts to feel too real, their mind tells them, run. If you stay, you'll lose yourself. This fear of enmeshment leads them to push away, even from the people they deeply care about. They might start ghosting, cancelling plans, or withdrawing emotionally. It's not that they don't love you. It's that their subconscious is screaming that love will cost them their independence. And here's the kicker. When you try to reassure them, when you give them more love, they don't see it as comfort. They see it as pressure. The great poet Rainer Maria Rilke once said, "Love consists of this two solitudes that protect and border and greet each other. But avoidants struggle with this balance. They don't trust that they can be in love and be free. So, instead of facing their fears, they sabotage. They create distance, pick fights over small things, or leave before they get too invested. It's their way of maintaining control. But in reality, they're not in control at all. They're just running from the very thing they crave. Avoidant exes don't just fear losing their independence. They also fear the raw, unpredictable nature of vulnerability. To them, opening up means exposing themselves to pain, rejection, and even abandonment. Rather than risk getting hurt, they build emotional walls so high that even the people they love can't get through. The great Maya Angelou once said, "I don't trust people who don't love themselves and tell me, 'I love you.'" This perfectly describes avoidance. They may care deeply, but because they struggle to be vulnerable with themselves, they resist being vulnerable with you. They've learned, either from childhood or past relationships, that showing emotions leads to disappointment. Maybe they grew up in a home where expressing feelings was met with ridicule. Maybe they once loved someone who shattered their trust. Either way, they internalized a dangerous lesson. Love isn't safe. Vulnerability is dangerous. So what do? They sabotage. The moment the relationship reaches a level of emotional depth that requires openness, they pull back. They deflect serious conversations, downplay their feelings, or even end the relationship just to avoid confronting their own emotions. As Ernest Hemingway put it, the world breaks everyone, and afterward some are strong at the broken places. But avoidance? They don't want to break in the first place. So they run before they get too close. And here's the paradox. While they push you away to protect themselves, deep down, they wish they could be open. They wish they could let you in. But their fear of emotional exposure is greater than their desire to stay. That's why silence, distance, or even coldness becomes their shield. But here's what you need to know. You cannot fix someone who isn't ready to heal. The more you try to show them that vulnerability is safe, the more they will resist. Instead of exhausting yourself trying to break down their walls, focus on someone who isn't afraid to meet you halfway. Avoidant exes don't just run when things go wrong. They often sabotage relationships when everything is going right. It sounds illogical, but to them, happiness feels like unfamiliar territory. And what do people do in unfamiliar territory? They retreat. As Sigmund Freud once said, people do not really want freedom, because freedom involves responsibility, and most people are frightened of responsibility. Avoidants are not just afraid of love, they're afraid of what love requires. Stability, consistency, and emotional openness don't just feel difficult, they feel like a trap. For an avoidant, deep emotional connection can trigger something called foreboding joy. The fear that something good will inevitably lead to something bad. If they've experienced abandonment, betrayal, or emotional neglect in the past, happiness doesn't feel like a blessing. It feels like a setup. They think, this won't last. Something bad is coming. Better leave before I get hurt. This is why they may seem fully invested one moment and distant the next. The closer they get, the more their mind starts looking for a reason to escape. Maybe they'll nitpick small issues, start fights over nothing, or convince themselves that the relationship isn't right. It's not that they don't love you, it's that loving you makes them feel too exposed. The poet Khalil Gibran wrote, "Love knows not its own depth until the hour of separation." And for avoidance, that's exactly what happens. Only after sabotaging the relationship do they realize they cared. But by then, it's too late. They were so busy protecting themselves from pain that they destroyed something real. So, what's the lesson here? You can't prove to someone that love is safe if they refuse to believe it. No amount of reassurance can fix a person who doesn't trust happiness. That's why the best thing you can do is stop chasing and start valuing your own peace. Reason number 4. They fear emotional dependency. Avoidant exes don't just fear intimacy, they fear needing someone. To them, emotional dependency feels like weakness, like giving someone else too much power over their happiness. So even when they care, they push you away to prove to themselves that they don't need you. As Friedrich Nietzsche once said, "He who cannot obey himself will be commanded." Avoidants live by this belief. They associate love with control, so the moment they feel emotionally attached, their survival instinct kicks in. Detach before it's too late. Think about it. When you're in love, you naturally rely on your partner for support, comfort, and companionship. But to an avoidant, that reliance feels dangerous. They grew up believing that depending on others leads to disappointment or pain. Maybe they had emotionally unavailable parents. Maybe they loved someone who abandoned them. Either way, they learned that emotional attachment is risky, so they avoid it at all costs. This is why they seem independent to the point of isolation. They pride themselves on self-sufficiency, convincing themselves that they don't need closeness, when in reality they're just terrified of what closeness might cost them. It's a classic defense mechanism. If I don't rely on anyone, no one can hurt me. And here's the twist. When you pull away, they feel the loss. But instead of admitting it, they double down on their detachment. They pretend they're fine. They act like the breakup doesn't affect them. But deep inside, they struggle with an internal war between wanting connection and fearing it. As author Brené Brown wisely said, "We cultivate love when we allow our most vulnerable and powerful selves to be deeply seen and known." But avoidants aren't ready for that level of openness. They choose sabotage over vulnerability, even if it costs them the person they love. Reason number 5. They come back when they feel safe again. Avoidant exes don't always disappear for good. In fact, many of them come back, but not for the reasons you might think. It's not because they've had a sudden epiphany or realized they made a huge mistake. It's because time and distance make them feel safe again. As Napoleon Bonaparte once said, the greatest danger occurs at the moment of victory. For avoidants, the victory is emotional closeness. When a relationship reaches a point of deep connection, they feel overwhelmed and retreat. But once they've put enough distance between themselves and their emotions, they convince themselves they can handle coming back on their terms. This is why avoidant exes often resurface when you least expect it. Maybe it's been weeks, months, or even years since the breakup. Just when you've started to move on, they reappear with a simple, "Hey, how have you been?" It's not that they don't care, it's that they only feel comfortable expressing that care when the threat of emotional intensity is gone. Think about it. When you were together, your presence challenged them. It made them confront their fears of closeness, dependency, and commitment. But when they leave, that pressure disappears. They can now romanticize the relationship from a distance, remembering only the good parts. And because they no longer feel trapped, they reach out, not realizing they're just restarting the cycle. The famous psychologist Carl Rogers once said, "The only person who is educated is the one who has learned how to learn and change." And this is the key. If an avoidant hasn't done the deep inner work to face their fears, their return doesn't mean they've changed. It just means they feel safe enough to re-engage, for now. So what should you do? Recognize the pattern. If they ran once without explanation, they might do it again. If they truly want to be different, their actions, not just their words, will show it. And if they're still avoiding emotional depth, then their return isn't about love. It's about comfort. Drop a comment below. I don't accept temporary love. And keep watching, because the next reason will show you why avoidants often sabotage relationships even when they think they're doing the right thing. Reason number 6. They think leaving is what's best for you. Avoidant exes don't just sabotage relationships for selfish reasons. Sometimes they convince themselves they're doing you a favor by walking away. They believe that their inability to fully commit or be emotionally present makes them unworthy of love. So rather than risk disappointing you, they preemptively abandon the relationship. As Henry David Thoreau once said, the mass of men lead lives of quiet desperation. Avoidants are no different. Deep down, they know they struggle with emotional intimacy. They recognize their own fears, their tendency to pull away, their inability to give you the love you deserve. And rather than facing those demons, they rationalize their exit with a self-sacrificing excuse. I'm just not good for you. This is why so many avoidants break up in a way that leaves you utterly confused. They might say things like, "You deserve someone who can love you better. I just can't give you what you need. I'm not in the right place for a relationship." These phrases aren't always lies, but they're not always the full truth either. The reality is, rather than working on their emotional barriers, they choose the easy way out. Instead of acknowledging that love requires effort, they convince themselves that letting you go is the noble thing to do. But here's the kicker. If they truly wanted what was best for you, they would work on themselves instead of running. Love isn't about being perfect. It's about showing up, even when it's difficult. The great poet Rumi once said, "Your task is not to seek for love, but merely to seek and find all the barriers within yourself that you have built against it." Avoidants, however, don't seek to remove their barriers. They just avoid love altogether. So, if an avoidant ex left you with a selfless excuse, don't let it haunt you. It wasn't about you not being enough. It was about them not being willing to grow. And that's not your burden to carry. Reason number 7. They struggle with regret, but often too late. Avoidant exes may seem cold and indifferent when they leave, but that doesn't mean they don't feel regret. The problem is, they process emotions slowly, often long after the damage has been done. By the time they realize what they lost, you've likely already healed and moved on. As the legendary playwright Oscar Wilde once said, "The tragedy of old age is not that one is old, but that one is young." Avoidants don't grasp the depth of their emotions in the moment. They convince themselves that leaving was the right decision, until time forces them to sit with the reality of their loss. At first, they feel relief. Space makes them feel in control again. They tell themselves they did the right thing by avoiding deeper attachment. But as the months pass, they start to reflect, not with logic, but with nostalgia. They remember your warmth, your patience, the way you made them feel seen. And for the first time, they feel the absence of that. That's when the regret kicks in. But here's the painful truth. Avoidants struggle with emotional reconnection just as much as they struggle with emotional intimacy. Even if they miss you, their instinct isn't to reach out, it's to suppress. They tell themselves they're probably happier without me. I wouldn't know what to say anyway. It's too late. And so, some avoidants never come back, not because they don't care, but because facing their emotions head-on is too overwhelming. Others will reappear in subtle ways, testing the waters with a casual text or a like on social media. But if they haven't done the inner work, their return isn't about change. It's about seeking comfort in the familiarity of you. As the Stoic philosopher Seneca put it, we suffer more often in imagination than in reality. Avoidants suffer in silence, replaying what could have been but never acting on it. Their regret doesn't come in grand gestures. It comes in the quiet moments when they realize they let something real slip away. The truth about avoidant exes and how to reclaim your power. By now you understand that avoidant exes don't sabotage relationships because they don't care. They sabotage them because love terrifies them. They fear losing control, they fear emotional dependency, and most of all, they fear being truly seen. But here's the truth. That's not your battle to fight. As the great Toni Morrison once said, you want to fly, you got to give up the thing that weighs you down. If you've been stuck wondering why an avoidant ex pulled away, stop waiting for their validation. Stop hoping for closure. Your healing doesn't depend on their realization. It depends on your decision to move forward. The hard truth is that some avoidants never change. They cycle through relationships, running the moment things get real, only to return when it feels safe again. And if you allow it, they will pull you into that endless loop of uncertainty. But you deserve more than inconsistency. You deserve someone who doesn't just love you when it's convenient, but someone who chooses you fully and fearlessly. So ask yourself, do you really want to keep waiting for someone who fears the very love you have to give? Or are you ready to turn your pain into power? Drop a comment below. I choose love that stays. Let this be your mantra, your declaration of self-worth. And if this message resonated with you, don't forget to like this video, subscribe, and join the Ace Wisdom family. Together, we're not just talking about relationships, we're transforming lives. Picture this. You've finally moved on. The sleepless nights are behind you, the tears have dried, and your mind is at peace. You're glowing, embracing new opportunities, meeting new people. And just when you're about to step into a new chapter, your phone buzzes. A message. From them. The one who left. The one who took you for granted. The one who disappeared when you needed them most. Suddenly, they want to talk, to check in, to see how you're doing. But you know better. This isn't about you. This is about control. This is the Hoover. Sigmund Freud once said, "Unexpressed emotions will never die. They are buried alive and will come forth later in uglier ways." The person who discarded you, they buried their emotions, convinced they could move on without consequence. But life has a funny way of humbling people. The moment you stop caring, they start noticing. The second you reclaim your power, they feel the void. And that's when they come back, not out of love, but out of fear. Fear that you no longer need them. Fear that they've lost control over you. And here's the painful truth. The Hoover always comes when you're moving on because they can sense your detachment. Like a fisherman who realizes the bait is no longer working, they scramble for a new tactic. They might come back with an apology, a grand gesture, or even fake self-awareness, quoting therapy buzzwords to convince you they've changed. But the question is, have they really changed, or are they just losing their grip? Maya Angelou once said, "When someone shows you who they are, believe them the first time. Think back to the person they were when they had you. Did they treat you with kindness? Did they respect your heart? If the answer is no, then what makes you think their return is anything but self-serving?" People don't suddenly wake up transformed. True change requires deep introspection, effort and accountability. Not just the fear of losing access to you, but let's go even deeper. Why do they return at the exact moment you've let go? Because their ego is fragile. They were fine when you were heartbroken because it validated their importance. But the second you stop chasing, the moment you stop looking back, their illusion of superiority crumbles. And instead of dealing with their own emptiness, they come running back to siphon more energy from you. Like a vampire deprived of its host, they return only when they sense they're no longer being fed. Napoleon Bonaparte once said, "Never interrupt your enemy when he is making a mistake." And that's exactly what you need to do here. Let them stew in their regret. Let them feel the emptiness they created. Let them sit with the realization that you are no longer an option. Because the moment you entertain their return, you give them exactly what they want. Validation that they still hold a place in your life. So here's my promise to you. By the end of this video, you will understand exactly why the Hoover happens, how to recognize their tactics, and most importantly, how to shut it down for good. If you're tired of the cycle, if you refuse to be pulled back into manipulation, then stay with me. Because what I'm about to share will change the way you handle these situations forever. Now, I want to hear from you. Type this in the comments. I am free. I am untouchable. Let the world, and most importantly yourself, know that you are no longer a pawn in their game. And if you're ready to reclaim your power, make sure to like this video, subscribe, and join our growing community. Together we rise. Let's begin. Reason number 1. The ego can't handle rejection. The first and most important reason they come back when you're moving on is that their ego simply cannot handle rejection. They didn't expect you to actually heal. They assumed you would stay in pain, longing for them, waiting for a sign of hope. But the moment they realize you're no longer chasing, that you've truly let go, their ego takes a hit. This isn't about love. It's about control. They don't like the idea of someone they once had power over slipping through their fingers. This is why the Hoover always comes after silence. They aren't checking in because they suddenly realized your value. They're checking in because they need to re-establish their importance in your life. If they can make you respond, if they can get any kind of emotional reaction out of you, whether it's love, anger, or sadness, it reassures them that they still have influence over you. And for someone with a fragile ego, that's everything. This is why you'll notice that if you ignore their first attempt at contact, they escalate, trying different tactics to get your attention. First, it might be a casual message. Then it could be a grand apology. If that doesn't work, they might resort to guilt, blame, or even anger. Anything to get a response. Don't fall into the trap of trying to prove your worth to them. You were always valuable. They just never deserved you. And now they have to live with the fact that they lost something they can never get back. Reason number 2. They mistook your pain for permanence. When they left, they saw your pain. They saw you struggling, crying, or feeling lost, and in their mind, that meant you would never truly move on. This is the mistake many people make when they hurt someone. They assume that just because the pain was deep, it will last forever. What they don't realize is that pain, when processed properly, leads to transformation. Tony Robbins said, "Change happens when the pain of staying the same is greater than the pain of change." There comes a point in your healing journey where the idea of staying stuck hurts more than the idea of moving forward. That's when everything shifts. You start to focus on yourself, rebuild your confidence, and create a new life without them. And once you reach that point, you don't look back. They thought you would always be emotionally available, but now you're outgrowing them. You're not reaching out. You're not begging for closure, and that scares them. Because if you're not in pain anymore, what does that mean? It means they no longer matter. A simple text. "Hey, how have you been?" Or maybe a social media like, just to see if you react. But the truth is, they aren't reaching out because they miss you. They're reaching out because they miss the version of you who needed them. Reason number 3, they need to know they still have access. Some people don't want a relationship with you, but they also don't want to let you go completely. They want to keep you as an option. And the easiest way to do that? They leave the door open, just enough to keep you wondering, just enough to keep you emotionally invested. When you were with them, they trained you to respond to their breadcrumbs. Maybe they disappeared for days, then came back with a sweet message. Maybe they pulled away emotionally, but kept just enough connection to stop you from leaving. This was conditioning. They were making sure that no matter how bad things got, you wouldn't completely cut them off. Maybe they send a casual "I miss you" text. Maybe they react to an Instagram story. Maybe they bring up an old inside joke just to see if they can still make you smile. It's a mind game, designed to check if they still have a hold on you. But here's what you need to understand. Access is power. The moment you give them any kind of response, you are showing them that the door is still open. That's all they need to keep playing their games. That's why some people will reach out, disappear again, then pop up months later. It's not because they love you, it's because they want to make sure they can still come back. So, what's the solution? Shut the door, block them, ignore them, move on. Because the only way they truly lose their grip on you is when they realize they no longer have access to your mind, your emotions, or your life. And once they feel that reality hit, that's when they truly regret losing you. Reason number 4. They see you thriving without them. Nothing triggers regret like watching someone you once took for granted become happier without you. The second they see you glowing, smiling, succeeding, that's when they suddenly realize your worth. But let's be real. If they truly valued you, they wouldn't have let you go in the first place. So, why now? Because seeing you thrive without them forces them to face an uncomfortable truth. They were never the reason for your happiness. They might have convinced themselves that you'd never find better, that you'd never be okay without them. But now, reality is proving them wrong. Albert Einstein said, "Insanity is doing the same thing over and over and expecting different results." And yet, here they are, coming back with the same tired tactics, expecting you to fall for them again. They don't want you back because they love you. They want you back because they hate seeing that you never needed them. This is why you must stay strong. Keep growing, keep healing, And most importantly, keep your standards high. They don't deserve the new version of you. And the best revenge? Living a life so full, so vibrant, so happy that they become nothing more than a distant memory. Reason number 5. They didn't expect you to outgrow them. When they left, they believed you would stay the same. Maybe they thought you'd always be waiting, hoping, stuck in the same cycle. They underestimated you. They didn't realize that the version of you they knew, the one who tolerated their excuses, ignored red flags and gave them endless chances, was only temporary. They failed to recognize that heartbreak doesn't just break people, it transforms them. Michelangelo once said, "The greater danger for most of us is not that our aim is too high and we miss it, but that it is too low and we reach it." You started aiming higher, focusing on yourself, and becoming a version of yourself they never saw coming. This is why they suddenly come back, not because they've changed, but because you have. And that scares them. They used to know how to manipulate you. They knew what buttons to press, what words to say. But now they don't recognize you. You've leveled up, and they feel small in comparison. But the truth is, their time in your life expired the moment you started growing beyond them. They don't belong in this new chapter of your life because they were only meant to be part of your past. And that's a hard pill for them to swallow. So when they reach out, remember, they aren't reaching out to celebrate your growth. They're reaching out to see if they still have a place in your world. And the best thing you can do, show them through your actions, not your words, that they don't. Keep rising, keep evolving, keep outgrowing them. That's how you truly win. Reason number 6. They're feeling empty and need supply. Some people don't seek relationships for love or connection. They seek them for validation and energy. They need someone to praise them, support them, care for them, and make them feel important. And when their supply runs out elsewhere, they come looking for it in the last place they remember finding it. You. Bob Marley once said, "The biggest coward is a man who awakens a woman's love with no intention of loving her." This applies perfectly to people who hoover. They don't come back because they want to give you love. They come back because they want to take energy from you. Think about it. Why didn't they come back when you were still hurting? Why didn't they return when you were struggling? Because back then, they assumed you still needed them. But now that you've detached, now that you've moved on, they feel the emptiness. Maybe their new relationship failed. Maybe life isn't going as planned. Maybe they just feel lonely. Whatever the reason, it has nothing to do with you and everything to do with their own emptiness. This is why you must be careful. They don't miss you. They miss what you gave them. They miss your kindness, your support, your belief in them. They miss how you made them feel. But do they regret how they treated you? Do they take accountability? No, you are not their emotional gas station. You are not their backup plan. You are not responsible for fixing what they broke. The moment you realize this, the moment you refuse to be their source of validation, you break free for good. Reason number 7. They hate losing control over you. At the core of every hoovering attempt is one simple truth. They hate losing control. When they were with you, they knew they had influence. They knew you cared. They knew they could disappear and come back, and you'd still be there. They had control, but the second you moved on, they lost that power, and that terrifies them. When you were still emotionally attached to them, they had that power over you. But now you've taken your power back. Now you realize that you don't need them. That's why they're coming back. Not because they love you, but because they hate the idea of no longer being able to control your emotions. This is why they suddenly act like they've changed. They might come back saying they've been reflecting, that they've grown, that they miss you. But actions speak louder than words. Have they actually changed? Or are they just scared of losing their hold over you? The real test is simple. If they truly respected you, they wouldn't have needed to lose you to value you. Love doesn't require loss to be recognized. If they only appreciate you after you've moved on, that's not love. That's regret. And their regret is not your problem. So, when they come back, trying to regain control, don't let them. They are not entitled to access you just because they miss what they lost. You're not the same person anymore. And once they realize that, they'll regret ever taking you for granted. So, why does the Hoover always come when you're moving on? Because they feel the shift. They feel you breaking free. They feel the loss of control. And instead of taking responsibility for why they lost you, they try to pull you back in, just to prove to themselves that they still can. But here's the truth. You are no longer that person. You are no longer waiting for them. You are no longer seeking their validation. You are no longer available for manipulation. And that's why this time, the Hoover won't work. Now, I want you to declare your power in the comments. Type this: I am free. I am untouchable. Let the world, and most importantly, yourself, know that you are done with the cycle. And if this resonated with you, like this video, subscribe, and share it with someone who needs to hear this. Because we are not just talking about healing, we are talking about reclaiming power. Let's rise. They thought you'd crumble, but here's what really happens in their mind when they discard you. The greatest revenge is massive success, Frank Sinatra once said. Let's use a scenario. A woman stands at the door, her back turned, suitcase in hand. She doesn't look back, doesn't offer an explanation. She simply leaves. He stands there, frozen, heart pounding, mind racing. Was it something he did? Something he didn't do? He replays every moment, searching for clues, for signs he missed. But the truth is, the moment she made her decision, the script was already written. She believes she holds the power. She thinks he will chase, beg, and break under the weight of her absence. But what she doesn't know is that the real story is just beginning, inside her own mind. You see, when someone discards you, they don't walk away as cleanly as they pretend. Their mind becomes a battlefield, a war between their ego and reality. At first, they feel a rush of control, a sense of power. They believe they've won, that they hold all the cards. But as time passes, a different emotion creeps in. Uncertainty. And uncertainty, as the great Sun Tzu warned, is the enemy of power. In the beginning, they expect your reaction. They count on your pain, your confusion, your desperate attempts to make sense of it all. They've likely done this before, and they assume the cycle will repeat. But what they don't anticipate is your silence. not as a plea for attention, but as a statement of strength. He who angers you conquers you, Elizabeth Kenny once said. The moment you refuse to play the game, the moment you stand tall in your self-worth, the seeds of doubt begin to sprout in their mind. They start to wonder, did I make the right choice? Their ego will fight against it, pushing the thought away, but deep inside, a new fear emerges. The fear of irrelevance. Discarding you was supposed to make them feel invincible, untouchable. But what happens when you don't react? When you don't fight for a place in their life? When you move forward with grace instead of desperation? That's when the illusion of control starts to crack. Even the most cold-hearted manipulators aren't immune to this effect. The philosopher Friedrich Nietzsche once said, "Whoever fights monsters should see to it that he does not become a monster in the process." The very act of discarding others, of treating people as disposable, chips away at their own sense of self over time. They may not show it, they may never admit it, but the weight of their choices lingers in the quiet moments when no one is watching. And here's the key. The moment they sense you are truly gone, not waiting, not hoping, not lingering in the shadows of their memory, that's when the regret sets in. Not always because they loved you, but because they loved the control they had over you. And now that control is gone. If you're ready to stop chasing, to stop seeking validation from those who never truly valued you, then stick with me. This video will show you exactly what happens inside their mind when they discard you, and why your silence is more powerful than their rejection. If this message resonates with you, don't just watch, take action. Hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications so you never miss an update. Your journey to self-empowerment starts now. Before we go deeper, drop this mantra in the comments. I am my own power. Let them wonder. Let them question. But most importantly, let them see that their absence means nothing compared to the presence of your own self-worth. Now, let's dive in. Stay focused. The first thing happens in their mind. When they discard you is that they feel an initial sense of power and control. When they discard you, their first reaction isn't guilt, sadness, or even second-guessing. It's a rush of control. At that moment, they believe they have the upper hand. They assume that walking away without explanation will leave you confused, hurt, and desperate for answers. This is where their ego thrives. In their mind, they've positioned themselves as the prize, the one who gets to make the decision, the one who determines your worth by their presence or absence. Psychologists call this intermittent reinforcement, a tactic often used by manipulators to keep you emotionally hooked. They believe that by suddenly withdrawing, they create an emotional void that you'll instinctively try to fill. The best way to keep a prisoner from escaping is to make sure he never knows he's in prison, Fyodor Dostoevsky once said. They expect you to chase, to demand answers, to break under the weight of their absence. They want you to reach out first, because the moment you do, it reaffirms their perceived superiority. But here's the truth. This sense of power is only temporary, and it's built on a fragile foundation. Because what happens when you don't react the way they expected? What happens when silence is met with silence? That's when the game shifts, and the real psychological battle begins. Stay with me, because in the next point, we'll uncover the moment their confidence starts to crack. Key point 2. The seeds of doubt begin to grow. At first, they feel invincible. They believe you're hurting, waiting, hoping they'll return. But something unexpected happens when you don't react the way they anticipated. Doubt creeps in. They were counting on you to reach out, to demand an explanation, to show them that they still have control over your emotions. But when the days pass and your name doesn't appear in their messages, when you don't chase, don't plead, don't even acknowledge their absence, that's when their confidence starts to crack. Doubt is an uncomfortable condition, but certainty is a ridiculous one, Voltaire once said. Now, instead of feeling powerful, they start questioning. Why haven't they reached out? Did they move on that fast? Did they ever really care about me? Wait, did I make a mistake? This is where their mind turns against them. The ego fights back, trying to reassure them that you must be suffering in silence, that you're just playing games. But deep inside they know something is different. The script isn't playing out like it used to, and suddenly they're the ones left wondering. This is the beginning of the reversal, when their sense of power shifts into uncertainty. And once doubt sets in, it's only a matter of time before they start feeling something even stronger: regret. Stay with me, because in the next key point, we'll explore the moment they realize they might have lost you forever. A key point 3, the fear of losing you sets in. At first, they felt in control. Then doubt crept in. Now something even more unsettling takes hold: fear. They expected you to chase. They thought you would break down, send a long message, or beg for closure. But you didn't. And now, they're starting to question their own decision. You don't know what you have until it's gone. Joni Mitchell. This is when their mind begins to spiral. Did I misjudge them? Why haven't they reacted the way I thought they would? Are they actually happier without me? Did I just lose someone valuable? Here's the irony. They didn't necessarily want you, but they wanted you to want them. Your silence is now speaking louder than words. Every day that passes without your attention chips away at their ego. Their sense of power was never about love. It was about control. And now that control is gone. And here's where something unexpected happens. They start looking for ways to pull you back. Maybe they watch your stories, like an old post, or send a random message, not because they miss you, but because they miss feeling important. But you're already ahead, because the moment you realize their fear isn't about love, but about losing control, you gain the upper hand. In the next key point, we'll uncover how their regret starts to eat away at them, and why it's too late. Stay with me. Key point 4. Regret begins to haunt them. Now that fear has set in, something even worse starts to happen: regret. At first, they believed discarding you was a power move. But now, as they sit alone with their thoughts, they start remembering the good moments. Not because they truly appreciate you, but because their ego is searching for reassurance. We must all suffer one of two things: the pain of discipline or the pain of regret. Jim Rohn. Regret is a tricky thing. It doesn't hit all at once. It creeps in slowly. They see something that reminds them of you. They hear a song you both loved. They scroll through old messages and wonder, did I really have it that good? They compare you to the people around them and realize no one measures up. And here's where reality smacks them in the face. They thought you'd always be there. They assumed you'd be waiting, heartbroken, hoping for them to return. But when they finally check, you've moved on. You're not bitter, not broken. You're just gone. And this is when regret turns into panic. They start thinking, can I still get them back? But the hard truth is, it's too late. Because by the time they realize what they lost, you've already found yourself. In the next key point, we'll break down their last-ditch effort to regain control and why you should never fall for it. Stay with me. The power is now in your hands. And there you have it. The truth about what really happens in their mind when they discard you. They start with confidence, but as time passes, doubt creeps in, fear takes over, regret haunts them, and eventually, they realize they lost something valuable. But here's the most important part. By the time they figure it out, you've already won. The best revenge is to be unlike him who performed the injury. Marcus Aurelius. You see, their biggest mistake wasn't leaving, it was assuming you couldn't thrive without them. But now you know better. You don't need their validation. You don't need closure. The only thing you ever needed was to recognize your own worth. If this message resonated with you, don't just listen, take action. Hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications so you never miss a video. Let's keep building a community of strength and self-respect together. Comment below. I am my own power. Let the world know that you are no longer waiting, no longer chasing. You are in control now. Thank you for watching. Keep standing tall, keep moving forward, and remember, your absence speaks louder than their words ever could. See you in the next video. You may not control all the events that happen to you, but you can decide not to be reduced by them. Maya Angelou. If you've ever dated an avoidant, you know the gut-wrenching cycle, the push and pull, the mixed signals, the emotional starvation. One day, they're close. The next, they're gone. You're left analyzing every detail, wondering if you were too much or not enough. But let me tell you something. The pain you feel right now, it's not a reflection of your worth. It's proof of your depth, your ability to love, and most importantly, your capacity to heal. You might think that healing means waiting for closure, waiting for them to realize what they lost. But as Steve Maraboli once said, the truth is, unless you let go, unless you forgive yourself, unless you forgive the situation, unless you realize that the situation is over, you cannot move forward. And moving forward is the only way to reclaim your peace. The best way to heal after dating an avoidant isn't about revenge, silence, or even understanding why they acted the way they did. It's about you, choosing yourself in a way you never have before. It's about realizing that the love you wanted from them, you can give it to yourself. And when you do that, you become untouchable. Marcus Aurelius said, "You have power over your mind, not outside events." Realize this, and you will find strength. Your healing begins the moment you stop trying to make sense of someone who refuses to be understood and start focusing on what you need to feel whole again. You don't need their validation. You don't need their return. You need you. So, in this video, I'm going to show you exactly how to do that. How to reclaim your power, rebuild your confidence, and walk away stronger than ever. If you stay with me until the end, you'll learn not only how to heal, but how to become someone who will never be trapped in this cycle again. This isn't just about getting over them. This is about rising above. And if you're ready to step into that power, let's take the first step together. Comment below. I choose me. This is your mantra, your declaration. Every time you feel the urge to reach out, to analyze, to doubt yourself, Come back to this. I choose me. Now, if you're ready to break free, hit that like button, subscribe, and join our community. Because this journey isn't just about healing, it's about transformation. And trust me, by the end of this video, you'll never see love or yourself the same way again. Strategy 1. Reclaim your emotional independence. The moment you accept responsibility for everything in your life is the moment you gain the power to change anything in your life. Hal Elrod. When you've been in a relationship with an avoidant, it's easy to feel like you were at their mercy, like they controlled the depth of connection, the pace of intimacy, and ultimately, the outcome of the relationship. But here's the truth. They never had the power, only the power you gave them. And the first step in healing is reclaiming that power by becoming emotionally independent. Emotional independence doesn't mean shutting off your feelings or pretending you don't care. It means learning to self-soothe rather than relying on them or anyone else to regulate your emotions. It means becoming your own safe space. It means no longer waiting for their validation, their apology, or their return. Because real healing happens when you stop looking outside for closure and realize that you are the closure. As Eleanor Roosevelt once said, no one can make you feel inferior without your consent. And the same applies here. No one can make you feel abandoned unless you abandon yourself first. So how do you take your emotional independence back? Observe, don't obsess. Every time you catch yourself spiraling into thoughts about them, step back. Instead of drowning in the emotions, observe them like a neutral third party. Say to yourself, I'm noticing that I'm feeling abandoned right now, rather than I am abandoned. This small shift changes everything. Reprogram your inner dialogue. The stories you tell yourself shape your reality. If your mind keeps repeating, I wasn't enough, or I'll never find someone better, it's time to rewrite the script. A better story? I am whole with or without them. I am enough as I am. Break the dopamine cycle. The push and pull dynamic with an avoidant creates an addictive pattern. Their rare moments of affection followed by withdrawal trigger a chemical response in your brain, much like a drug. To break this cycle, you must go cold turkey. No contact, no lurking on their social media, no hoping they'll reach out. Instead, replace that dopamine craving with something that nourishes you. A new hobby, deep friendships, exercise, or creative expression. Redirect your energy. What if, instead of pouring energy into dissecting their every move, you invested that same energy into becoming the person you were always meant to be? Every moment spent analyzing them is a moment stolen from your own growth. Take that energy back. Reclaiming your emotional independence is the most liberating thing you'll ever do. It's what separates those who heal from those who stay stuck. And here's the best part. When you do this, you become unavailable for emotionally unavailable people. They won't have the same hold on you because you'll have outgrown the need for their breadcrumbs. Your mantra for today, I am whole. I am my own source of love. Type it in the comments and make it real. And if you're ready for the next step in healing, stay with me. Because the next strategy will take your transformation even further. Strategy 2. Break the trauma bond. You teach people how to treat you by what you allow, what you stop, and what you reinforce. Tony Gaskins. One of the hardest parts of healing after dating an avoidant is breaking the trauma bond. This is not just about missing them. It's about being chemically and emotionally addicted to the cycle of highs and lows they created. When they gave you attention, your brain released dopamine, making you feel euphoric. But when they pulled away, you crashed, craving their validation again. This pattern keeps you stuck, not because they were good for you, but because your nervous system got addicted to the chase. Breaking the trauma bond starts with radical acceptance. Stop waiting for closure. Stop analyzing their actions. And most importantly, stop believing the illusion that they were ever going to change. An avoidant doesn't withhold love because you weren't worthy. They withhold love because they never learned how to give it. Understanding this doesn't excuse their behavior, but it frees you from taking it personally. As Carl Jung said, until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate. You were not fated to be stuck in this cycle. You have the power to break free. The next step? No contact. I know, it's tempting to check their social media, to reread old messages, to hold on to the idea that maybe, just maybe, they'll come back different. But every time you do, you reopen the wound. The longer you stay attached to them in your mind, the longer you delay your healing. Think of it this way. If you were trying to detox from a toxic substance, would you take just one more hit and expect to recover? No. The only way out is complete emotional and physical distance. And finally, replace. Don't just remove. When you break a bond, your brain will seek something to fill the void. This is where your power lies. Instead of letting the void consume you, fill it with things that nourish you. New experiences, deeper friendships, self-care, and personal growth. The more you focus on rebuilding yourself, the less power they will have over you. Your mantra for today. I release what no longer serves me. Type it in the comments and claim your freedom. The next strategy will take your healing even deeper. Stay with me. Strategy 3. Rewire your attachment patterns. Until you heal the wounds of your past, you will continue to bleed on those who did not cut you. Dr. Steve Maraboli. Dating an avoidant wasn't just painful, it exposed something deeper: your attachment patterns. If you found yourself craving their love, obsessing over their withdrawal, or feeling like you had to prove your worth, you weren't just reacting to them. You were reacting to old wounds. Maybe from childhood, maybe from past relationships, maybe from moments where you felt unseen or unworthy. The truth is, their emotional unavailability triggered something in you that was already there. And that's what we need to heal. Rewiring your attachment pattern starts with awareness. Take a step back and ask yourself, why was I so drawn to them? Why did their distance make me chase harder? Why did I ignore the red flags? These questions are uncomfortable, but they hold the key to your transformation. As Oprah Winfrey once said, turn your wounds into wisdom. This isn't about blaming yourself. It's about understanding yourself so you never repeat the cycle again. The next step, start cultivating a secure attachment within yourself. This means becoming the person who gives you the emotional safety, validation, and consistency that you were seeking from them. Instead of waiting for someone else to make you feel chosen, choose yourself every day. Instead of fearing abandonment, remind yourself, I am always safe with me. Instead of tolerating emotional scraps, raise your standards for the love you accept, starting with the love you give yourself. And here's the most powerful shift. Start seeking relationships that feel peaceful, not chaotic. If chemistry for you has always meant intensity, anxiety, and unpredictability, That's not real connection. That's just familiarity. And what's familiar isn't always healthy. True love feels safe, stable, and mutual. It doesn't leave you guessing. It doesn't make you question your worth. It meets you where you are, without the games. Your mantra for today: I am worthy of safe, healthy love. Comment it below to make it real. And if you're ready to continue this transformation, stay with me, because the next strategy will teach you how to rebuild your self-worth from the inside out. Strategy 4. Rebuild your self-worth from the inside out. Your value doesn't decrease based on someone's inability to see your worth. Unknown. One of the most damaging effects of dating an avoidant is what it does to your self-worth. When someone constantly pulls away, refuses to meet your emotional needs, and makes you feel like you're asking for too much, it's easy to internalize the idea that maybe you were the problem. But let's be clear. Your worth has never depended on their ability to recognize it. Their avoidance wasn't a reflection of your value. It was a reflection of their own emotional limitations. Rebuilding your self-worth starts with challenging the false beliefs their behavior created in you. If you walked away thinking, maybe I'm too much or maybe I'm not lovable enough, pause and ask yourself, would I ever say that to someone I love? No. So why are you saying it to yourself? The truth is, you were not asking for too much. You were just asking the wrong person. The right person wouldn't make you feel like love is a battle to win. They would meet you with open arms, not a closed heart. The next step: stop seeking validation outside of yourself. When you tie your self-worth to someone else's attention, you will always feel unsteady. Instead, start building your sense of value from within. Do things that make you proud of yourself. Keep promises to yourself. Show up for yourself in ways no one else ever has. The more you do this, the less their opinion will matter, because you will know deep down that you were enough all along. Another powerful shift: reaffirm your worth daily. Your thoughts shape your reality, and if you've spent months or years doubting yourself, it's time to reprogram that narrative. Every morning, look in the mirror and say, I am enough. I am whole. I am deserving of love that stays. It may feel uncomfortable at first, but over time this rewires your brain to believe what was always true. You were never broken, just conditioned to believe you were. Your mantra for today: I am enough exactly as I am. Type it in the comments to claim it. And if you're ready to take your healing to the next level, stay with me. Because the next strategy will teach you how to set boundaries that protect your heart and energy. Strategy 5. Set boundaries that protect your heart. When you say yes to others, make sure you are not saying no to yourself. Paulo Coelho. One of the biggest lessons you learn after dating an avoidant is the importance of boundaries. Because let's be honest, if you tolerated their hot and cold behavior, their emotional distance and their lack of commitment, there's a chance your boundaries were too weak. But that's not your fault. Many of us were never taught how to set boundaries, especially in relationships. We were taught to be understanding, patient, and forgiving, sometimes at the cost of our own well-being. But boundaries are not about controlling others. They are about protecting yourself. A powerful shift happens when you stop worrying about losing them and start worrying about losing yourself. When you date an avoidant, you learn firsthand what it feels like to constantly overextend, to give more than you receive, to settle for breadcrumbs, but no more. From this point forward, your boundaries will be your shield. They will filter out people who can't meet your needs before they ever get too close. So, how do you start? First, get crystal clear on your non-negotiables. What behaviors will you no longer tolerate in a relationship? Emotional unavailability? Lack of communication? Inconsistency? Write them down. Next, practice stating your needs with confidence. You don't have to explain, justify, or beg for someone to respect you. As Brené Brown says, daring to set boundaries is about having the courage to love ourselves, even when we risk disappointing others. And finally, enforce your boundaries with action. If someone repeatedly crosses your line, walk away. Boundaries mean nothing if there are no consequences for breaking them. Your mantra for today: my boundaries are my self-respect. Type it in the comments to affirm it. Now, let's move on, because the next strategy will show you how to shift your mindset so you can attract healthy, secure love. Strategy 6. Shift your mindset and stop attracting avoidance. Your relationships are a reflection of your self-worth. Jay Shetty. The hard truth? If you have a pattern of attracting avoidance, it's not just about them, it's about you. Not because you are to blame, but because we unconsciously attract what feels familiar. If you've spent your life chasing emotionally unavailable people, it's time to ask yourself, what part of me believes that love has to feel like this? Because real love is not about proving your worth. It's not about waiting, guessing, or hoping. It's about being met, fully and consistently. To change who you attract, you have to change what you tolerate. You have to stop mistaking inconsistency for passion. You have to stop mistaking emotional unavailability for mystery. And most of all, you have to start believing that love should feel safe, not like a test. When you heal, you will no longer find avoidance attractive. You will find them exhausting. You will crave stability, security, and emotional depth. And most importantly, you will choose people who choose you back. So, how do you shift your mindset? First, start visualizing the kind of relationship you actually want. What does a healthy, secure partnership look like? Feel like? Make that your new standard. Next, practice self-validation. The more you affirm your own worth, the less you will need external validation, especially from people who can't give it consistently. Lastly, trust yourself. If someone's actions are making you feel insecure, uncertain, or unworthy, walk away sooner. You don't need another lesson. You don't need more proof. If it's draining your peace, it's not meant for you. Your mantra for today: I attract love that is secure, stable, and mutual. Type it in the comments to claim it. And if you're ready for the final strategy, keep going, because this last step will set you free in ways you never expected. Strategy 7. Turn this pain into power. The wound is the place where the light enters you. Rumi. At the end of the day, the most powerful thing you can do after dating an avoidant is turn your pain into power. You have two choices. You can stay stuck, replaying the story of how they hurt you, or you can rewrite the story entirely. One where you are no longer the victim, but the hero. One where this heartbreak was not an ending, but a turning point. Because here's the truth. This experience didn't break you. It woke you up. It showed you exactly what you don't want. It revealed the parts of you that still needed healing. It taught you that love should never feel like a guessing game. And most importantly, it reminded you that the most important relationship you will ever have is the one you have with yourself. So, how do you turn pain into power? First, shift your focus from "Why did this happen to me?" to "What is this teaching me?" Every challenge in life comes with a lesson. Take yours and use it to evolve. Next, channel your energy into growth. Start building the life you've always wanted, independent of any relationship. Pour into yourself, mentally, emotionally, physically, spiritually. And finally, adopt an unshakable mindset. If losing them means finding myself, then it was never really a loss, because that's the ultimate lesson. The best revenge is always success. Not in the petty way. No, the real success is your healing, your confidence, your ability to walk away from anyone who doesn't meet you at your worth. And when you do that, you become untouchable. Your final mantra. I turn my pain into power. Type it in the comments as your declaration. And if this message resonated with you, be sure to like this video, subscribe, and share this with someone who needs to hear it. Because your healing is not just possible, it's inevitable. Your power begins now, and still, I rise. Maya Angelou. You've made it to the end of this video, and that alone tells me one thing. You are ready. Ready to heal, ready to grow, ready to become someone who will never again settle for less than they deserve. Dating an avoidant may have hurt you, but it did not break you. It woke you up. And now you hold the power to rewrite your story. This journey isn't just about getting over them. It's about stepping into a version of yourself that is stronger, wiser, and completely untouchable. No more chasing. No more questioning your worth. No more settling for breadcrumbs when you deserve the whole feast. From this moment forward, you choose yourself. So, if this message resonated with you, do one thing. Declare it. Type in the comments right now. I choose me. Because the moment you say it, you claim it. And once you claim it, everything changes. If you found value in this video, don't stop here. Like, subscribe, and join our community. We are building something powerful here, and you don't have to do this alone. Share this video with someone who needs to hear it. Someone who needs to be reminded that they're enough. Because healing isn't just personal. It's something we do together. And remember, the best is yet to come. Your healing isn't just possible, it's already happening. Keep going, keep rising, and I'll see you in the next video. Your ex is posting pictures, laughing with friends, and acting as if losing you was the best thing that ever happened to them. But is it real, or just a carefully crafted illusion? Avoidants have mastered the art of emotional camouflage. They want the world, and maybe even themselves, to believe they're perfectly fine without you. But behind closed doors, when no one is watching, the mask starts to slip. Sigmund Freud once said, "Being entirely honest with oneself is a good exercise, but honesty is exactly what avoidants struggle with the most." They don't process pain like everyone else. Instead of facing their emotions, they suppress them, burying their feelings so deep they start believing their own lies. So, when they act like they've moved on overnight, it's not because they don't feel anything, it's because they refuse to. But here's the truth. Happiness isn't proven by Instagram posts or forced smiles in social settings. Real happiness is quiet, content, and doesn't need validation. The question is, if your avoidant ex is truly over you, why do they seem so desperate to prove it? Why does their happiness feel more like a performance than a reality? Ralph Waldo Emerson wisely said, What you do speaks so loudly that I cannot hear what you say. If your ex was genuinely at peace, they wouldn't need to flaunt their detachment. They wouldn't need to exaggerate their joy or ensure that you see it. That's not moving on. That's a silent cry for control. The more an avoidant pretends they're fine, the more likely they're battling an internal war. They are avoiding not just you, but their own feelings. But the most important question isn't whether they're happy without you. It's whether you are still tethered to their illusion. Lao Tzu once said, "When I let go of what I am, I become what I might be." The moment you stop analyzing their every move and step into your own power, you regain control. You stop playing their game, and suddenly, they are the ones who feel your absence. The shift is inevitable. Now, here's the promise. By the end of this video, you'll not only recognize the truth behind their act, but you'll also understand how to reclaim your power and detach in a way that forces them to truly feel your absence. Because nothing shakes an avoidant more than realizing they've lost someone who no longer needs them. If you're ready to break free from the illusion and step into your power, watch until the end. And if this resonates with you, hit that like button, subscribe, and comment below. I choose my own peace. Let's rewrite the story together. Stay focused. Key point number 1. Avoidance fake happiness to maintain control. One of the most defining traits of an avoidant ex is their desperate need to appear unaffected by a breakup. While you may find yourself questioning, are they truly happy without me? The real question you should be asking is, why are they working so hard to make it look that way? Avoidants don't process emotions in a healthy, linear way. Unlike someone secure who might grieve the end of a relationship, reflect and heal, an avoidant sees emotional vulnerability as a threat. To them, acknowledging sadness, regret, or longing means surrendering control, not just over themselves, but over how others perceive them. They don't want to give you or anyone else the satisfaction of knowing they're struggling, so they suppress those emotions and replace them with a carefully curated image of indifference. This illusion of happiness serves multiple purposes. First, it reinforces their belief that they are self-sufficient and don't need anyone. Second, it helps them avoid accountability. If they appear happy and unaffected, they don't have to reflect on the deeper issues that led to the breakup. Lastly, it allows them to control the narrative. Because as long as they act fine, they assume you'll start questioning yourself instead of seeing the truth. They're just pretending. But here's the irony. Control is an illusion. The more they suppress their emotions, the more likely those emotions will surface at unexpected times. Avoidance can run, but they can't outrun their own minds forever. Key point number 2. Social media and public appearances are a smokescreen. One of the biggest traps people fall into after a breakup is believing everything they see on social media. Your avoidant ex is suddenly posting more than ever, looking happy, thriving, and possibly even dating someone new. But before you spiral into self-doubt, remember this. Social media is not reality. It's a performance. Avoidants don't just avoid their emotions. They also manipulate the way they appear to others. They understand that perception is powerful, and in today's world, perception is built through posts, stories, and carefully chosen captions. So when they put on a show of being happy, they're not just doing it for themselves. They're doing it for you. They want to plant a seed of doubt in your mind. They want you to think, maybe I was the problem. Maybe they're better off without me. But here's something to consider. Truly happy people don't need to prove it to the world. But here's something to consider. Truly happy people don't need to prove it to the world. When someone is genuinely at peace, they're not going out of their way to showcase it. They're simply living it. The louder the performance, the deeper the insecurity. If your ex is suddenly flaunting their happiness, it's likely because they are trying to convince themselves just as much as they're trying to convince you. So, don't let social media dictate your healing process. What they post isn't proof of their well-being. It's just a carefully curated highlight reel meant to serve their ego and avoid the reality they refuse to face. Key point number 3. Avoidants distract themselves to avoid emotional depth. One of the most common patterns among avoidants is their need to stay busy after a breakup. They'll throw themselves into work, start new hobbies, increase their social activities, or even jump into a rebound relationship. On the surface, it may look like they've effortlessly moved on, but in reality, they are just distracting themselves from dealing with their emotions. Unlike secure individuals who process breakups by sitting with their emotions, reflecting and working through their pain, avoidants take the opposite approach. To them, emotional pain is something to be avoided at all costs, so they drown it out with external distractions. The more they keep themselves occupied, the less time they have to sit in silence and feel. But the thing about emotions is that they don't disappear just because you ignore them. They stay buried beneath the surface, building pressure, waiting for an unguarded moment to rise. This is why avoidants often struggle with delayed grief. This is why their happiness often has an expiration date. This is why their happiness often has an expiration date. The distractions work for a while, but once the excitement fades and they are left alone with their thoughts, reality sets in. And when that moment comes, they realize that running from emotions doesn't make them go away. It just postpones the inevitable reckoning. So, while you may be tempted to believe they've moved on effortlessly, know that the process they've chosen is temporary at best. Healing doesn't come from avoidance. It comes from acknowledgement. And until they face what they've buried, they will remain stuck in a cycle of distraction, unable to truly move forward. The key point number 4. Avoidants struggle with emotional intimacy, even with themselves. One of the biggest misconceptions about avoidant exes is that they don't feel pain after a breakup. The truth is, they do, but they don't know how to process it. Their entire attachment style is built around emotional detachment, which means that when faced with heartbreak, they don't engage with their emotions like a secure person would. Instead of grieving, reflecting, or seeking closure, they suppress, deflect, and avoid. This isn't just about avoiding you, it's about avoiding themselves. To acknowledge their pain would mean admitting that they care more than they let on. It would force them to confront their own fears, insecurities, and unhealed wounds from the past. And for someone with an avoidant attachment style, that level of introspection is terrifying. This is why you may notice that your avoidant ex moves on quickly or jumps into another relationship. This is why you may notice that your avoidant ex moves on quickly or jumps into another relationship. It's not because they've healed. It's because they need another person or activity to keep them from dealing with their own emotions. Rebounds, excessive socializing, or even acting cold and indifferent are just coping mechanisms to escape the truth. They are uncomfortable with emotional intimacy, even within themselves. But here's where things get interesting. While they may seem indifferent now, their emotions don't just disappear. Avoidants experience delayed grief. meaning they process breakups much later than most people do. They can go months, even years, without acknowledging their feelings, but at some point, reality catches up to them. When life slows down, when the distractions fade, when they find themselves alone in their own thoughts. That's when the weight of everything they've suppressed finally hits them. And by then, you will have likely moved on, leaving them to face the very emotions they ran from. So if it seems like they're unaffected, remember this. Avoidance isn't the absence of feelings. It's the refusal to deal with them. So if it seems like they're unaffected, remember this. Avoidance isn't the absence of feelings. It's the refusal to deal with them. And sooner or later, the emotions they've buried will come back to the surface. Key point number 5. Their independence is a defense mechanism, not strength. Avoidants often pride themselves on being independent. They project an image of self-sufficiency, making it seem as if they never needed the relationship in the first place. But here's the truth. Their so-called independence isn't always a sign of strength. It's a shield, a way to protect themselves from the vulnerability that true intimacy requires. Deep down, avoidants fear emotional dependency because it makes them feel out of control. They learned at an early age that relying on others leads to disappointment or rejection, so they overcompensate by convincing themselves that they don't need anyone. This belief gets reinforced after a breakup, where they quickly retreat into their solitude as if to say, "See?" But independence that comes from fear isn't true independence. It's emotional self-isolation. A person who is truly at peace with themselves doesn't need to prove how unbothered they are. They don't need to make a statement about how much better they are on their own. They don't need to make a statement about how much better they are on their own. True emotional strength allows someone to connect deeply with others while still maintaining a sense of self. An avoidant's emotional detachment after a breakup isn't a reflection of their happiness. It's a reflection of their fear of vulnerability. They withdraw, not because they don't care, but because caring requires them to confront emotions they'd rather avoid. So when they act like they never needed you, remember, their independence isn't a sign that they've won. It's a sign that they are still trapped in their own walls. The truth about their happiness. So, is your avoidant ex truly happy without you? Or are they just pretending? By now you should see the truth. What they project on the outside isn't always what's happening on the inside. Avoidants aren't as unaffected as they seem. They suppress, distract, and isolate, not because they're at peace, but because they don't know how to process their emotions in a healthy way. But here's what really matters. Your happiness isn't tied to their illusion. Whether they're faking it or not, the real question is, why are you still focusing on their happiness instead of your own? Their avoidance isn't your burden to carry. Their avoidance isn't your burden to carry. Their emotional walls aren't yours to break down. You have the power to shift your energy back to where it belongs. On you. The moment you stop analyzing their every move and start prioritizing your own healing, you take back control. Because at the end of the day, nothing disrupts an avoidant more than realizing they've lost someone who no longer needs them. Now, I want you to take a stand for yourself. Drop this mantra in the comments below. I choose my own peace. Let this be your reminder that your happiness is yours to create. It doesn't depend on them. If this video gave you clarity, make sure to like, subscribe and share so we can continue to bring you powerful insights to help you heal and grow. And remember, Your silence, your strength, and your ability to move forward will always speak louder than their illusion. See you in... Should you move on or wait? The truth about avoidant exes. What if the person you loved the most suddenly vanished? Not in body, but in presence. The late-night texts, the inside jokes, the warmth in their eyes, all gone. They didn't leave with a dramatic goodbye. No, they just started pulling away little by little until you were left questioning if it was all in your head. You try to reach them, but their responses are cold, distant, almost robotic. It's like they built a wall overnight, one you weren't invited behind. Now you're stuck wondering, should I wait for them to come back? Or is it time to finally let go? This is the cruel reality of being entangled with an avoidant ex. It's not that they don't feel, it's that their feelings scare them. As Warren Buffett once said, chains of habit are too light to be felt until they are too heavy to be broken. The cycle of push and pull they create isn't about you, it's about them. But here's the harsh truth. Waiting for an avoidant to suddenly transform into a secure, loving partner is like waiting for a ship at the airport. It's not coming. Yet we wait. We analyze their every move, searching for signs of hope. A late night, "How have you been?" message feels like a breakthrough. A breadcrumb of attention sends our heart racing. But is it real? Or is it just a moment of their own loneliness? As Tony Robbins says, if you do what you've always done, you'll get what you've always gotten. If they left you in emotional limbo before, why would the outcome be any different this time? Avoidants live in a paradox. They crave love, yet fear intimacy. They pull you close, then push you away. And if you don't understand the game, you'll keep playing their role of emotional stability, waiting for them to be ready. But let's be clear, waiting is a choice, and sometimes it's a choice that steals years from your life. You see, when you keep waiting, you put your own power in their hands. You tell yourself that their return will validate your worth. But validation never comes from someone who fears connection. It comes from within. As Maya Angelou famously said, never make someone a priority when all you are to them is an option. If you have to beg for their presence, they were never really yours to begin with. So, what do? You stop hoping for a version of them that only exists in your imagination. You stop thinking that if you just say the right words, show enough patience, or prove your love, they'll finally change. People don't change because we want them to. They change when they decide to. And that decision, it has nothing to do with you. Here's what will happen when you let go. The silence you once feared will become your greatest ally. It will no longer be a punishment. It will be proof of your strength. And the moment you stop waiting is the moment you start living again. As Steve Jobs said, your time is limited, so don't waste it living someone else's life. This video will reveal the raw truth about avoidant exes. Why they leave, why they return, and whether they ever truly change. By the end, you'll have absolute clarity on whether to move on or hold on. But be warned. The truth might not be what you want to hear. It's what you need to hear if you're ready to reclaim your power. Type this in the comments. I choose me. Because that's exactly what you need to do. Now let's dive in. Stay focused. The first thing you know before deciding if you should move on or wait is that avoidants don't leave because they stop caring. They leave because they fear intimacy. One of the biggest misconceptions about avoidant exes is that their emotional distance means they never cared about you. That's not always true. Many avoidants do feel deep emotions, but the closer they get to someone, the more they panic. They associate intimacy with a loss of control, and instead of embracing love, they retreat. Psychologist John Bowlby, the father of attachment theory, explained that avoidants develop this pattern as a defense mechanism. Maybe they grew up in an environment where vulnerability was punished, or they had past experiences that taught them that love equals pain. To them, distance feels safer than connection. So, when they pull away, it's not necessarily because they've lost feelings. It's because their fear of closeness is greater than their desire to stay. And this is where many people get trapped. You assume their departure is about you, when in reality it's about them. But here's the kicker. No amount of waiting, loving, or proving yourself will make them suddenly feel safe. They have to confront their own fears, and that's something only they can do. The question is, how long are you willing to wait for someone who may never be ready? So, should you move on or wait? If they haven't shown a willingness to face their fear of intimacy, waiting won't fix it. Love alone isn't enough to change an avoidant. They have to do the work themselves. If they're not actively trying, the best thing you can do is move on. Key point 2. Avoidants come back. But not for the reason you think. Just when you've started to heal, when you've finally accepted their absence, they reappear. A simple, "Hey, how have you been?" can throw you right back into emotional confusion. But before you get your hopes up, let's be clear. Avoidants don't return because they've changed. They return because they feel your absence. Avoidants operate in cycles. They push you away when they feel overwhelmed, but once enough time passes, they start to feel the loss. It's not necessarily because they miss you, but because they miss the comfort of knowing you were always there. They want to feel connected, but only on their terms. Just close enough to relieve their own loneliness, but never close enough to form a real commitment. This is why many avoidants engage in breadcrumbing, giving just enough attention to keep you emotionally hooked, but never enough to build a stable relationship. As the famous author Robert Greene says in The 48 Laws of Power, the moment you accept a gift, you become indebted to the giver. When you accept their return without real change, you fall right back into their cycle of control. So before you respond to that late-night text or random check-in, ask yourself, are they coming back because they truly want to grow, or just because they don't want to lose their emotional safety net? If their return is just about soothing their own loneliness and not about real change, moving on is the best choice. Pay attention to why they're coming back, not just the fact that they did. Key point 3. Avoidants don't fear losing you. They fear losing control. It's easy to believe that if your avoidant ex comes back, it must mean they've realized your worth. But here's the brutal truth. Avoidants don't fear losing you. They fear losing their grip on the dynamic. When you were fully invested, texting first, initiating plans, trying to break through their walls, they had the upper hand. They knew they could push you away and still expect you to be there when they decided to return. But when you finally step back, stop chasing, and shift your focus to yourself, that's when they start to panic. Not because they're afraid of losing your love, but because they're afraid of losing control over the situation. This is why avoidants often return just as you're moving on. They sense the change in energy. They realize you're no longer emotionally available for them to lean on when it's convenient. As author Mark Manson puts it, the only way to win the game is to stop playing. So the real question isn't whether they care about you. It's whether their return is motivated by genuine change or just a desire to maintain the familiar dynamic. And if it's the latter, ask yourself, are you willing to be someone's emotional crutch again? If they're only coming back because they sense you slipping away and not because they've genuinely changed, then moving on is the only way to break free from the cycle. You deserve someone who values you, not someone who only wants you when they think they're losing control. Key point 4. Your absence hurts more than your presence ever did. Here's something avoidants never expect, that you will actually leave. They assume you'll always be there, waiting, hoping, analyzing every little sign that they still care. But when you finally break the cycle and go silent, truly silent, that's when they start to feel the weight of their own choices. The philosopher Blaise Pascal once said, "All of humanity's problems stem from man's inability to sit quietly in a room alone. Avoidants distract themselves to avoid emotional depth. But when you remove yourself from their world, they are left to face their own emptiness. And that's not a comfortable place for them to be. They may not show it, but deep down, they notice your absence. The good morning texts that no longer come, the reassurance they once had that you'd always be there, it all disappears. Suddenly, they're left alone with their thoughts, and that silence is deafening. But here's what you need to understand. Just because they feel your absence doesn't mean they'll change because of it. This is where many people make the mistake of breaking no contact too soon. They assume that if their avoidant ex is feeling the loss, they must be learning their lesson. But avoidants don't process emotions like secure people do. They won't suddenly have an epiphany and rush back ready to love you the way you deserve. If they do return, it's often just to relieve their discomfort, not to truly change. So instead of wondering, do they miss me? Ask yourself, does their absence feel like peace or punishment? Because that answer tells you everything you need to know. Key point 5. Waiting for them to change will keep you stuck. Hope is a powerful thing, but in the wrong hands, it can be a trap. One of the biggest reasons people struggle to move on from avoidant exes is the belief that one day they will change. That one day they will wake up and realize what they lost. But here's the truth. Waiting for potential keeps you stuck in a cycle of disappointment. As best-selling author Dr. Henry Cloud says, we change our behavior when the pain of staying the same becomes greater than the pain of changing. But for most avoidants, the discomfort of emotional intimacy outweighs the pain of losing relationships. They don't experience breakups the same way you do. While you grieve the loss and seek closure, they suppress, distract, and detach. And here's the kicker. If they ever do change, it won't be because you waited. It will be because they decided to face their fears and do the inner work. But that's a journey only they can take. The more you wait, the more power you give away. Instead of waiting for them to change, ask yourself, what would my life look like if I focused on healing instead of hoping? Key point 6. Their return is not the closure you think it is. It's tempting to believe that if an avoidant ex comes back, it means you finally have answers. But the truth is, most avoidants return not to give closure, but to reopen a door they never fully closed. Avoidants rarely offer clear explanations for why they left in the first place. Their exits are often vague, cold, and filled with mixed signals. Then, when they come back, They expect you to pick up where you left off, without any accountability or real change. And because you never got closure, their return can feel like an opportunity to finally understand what went wrong. But here's what you need to know. Real closure doesn't come from them. It comes from you. As psychologist Dr. Ramani Durvasula says, closure isn't something you get, it's something you create. If you keep waiting for them to give you the perfect explanation or apology, you'll be waiting forever. Instead of seeing their return as proof of love, see it for what it really is, a test to see if you've truly moved on. When you stop seeking closure from them, you reclaim your power. And when you reclaim your power, their return no longer matters. Key point 7. Moving on is the only way to win. Avoidants operate in emotional games, push and pull, hot and cold, giving just enough to keep you hooked, but never enough to fully commit. And the only way to win that game? Stop playing. The moment you stop waiting, stop hoping, stop feeding their cycle, you take back control of your own life. You shift the focus from them to you. And that is when real healing begins. As Will Smith once said, stop letting people who do so little for you control so much of your mind, feelings, and emotions. Your avoidant ex may have once held power over your emotions, but you get to decide if they continue to. And the best way to regain control, by moving forward without them. This isn't about revenge, silence, or proving a point. It's about reclaiming your own happiness. Because at the end of the day, the best version of you isn't the one waiting for someone to choose you, it's the one who chooses themselves. So if you're ready to truly let go, type this in the comments. I release what no longer serves me. Because once you do that, the only direction left is forward. At the end of the day, you have two choices. Stay trapped in their cycle, hoping for change that may never come, or break free and reclaim your power. The truth about avoidant exes is simple. They won't change unless they choose to. And you don't have time to wait for someone who isn't ready to love you the way you deserve. Remember what Maya Angelou said, when someone shows you who they are, believe them the first time. If they've shown you that they fear commitment, that they run at the first sign of emotional closeness, why keep giving them a second, third, or fourth chance? Instead of asking, will they ever come back? Start asking, do I even want them back? Because that's where your real power lies. If this video resonated with you, if you're ready to stop waiting and start choosing yourself, here's what to do next. Hit the like button if you're ready to move forward. Subscribe for more eye-opening relationship insights. Comment below. I choose me. Say it. Own it. Live it. And if you want to go deeper into healing and self-growth, consider joining our Ace Wisdom family by becoming a channel member. Let's break the cycle together. Now take a deep breath. You're not losing them. You're finding yourself. And that's the greatest victory of all. See you in the next video. Should you move on or wait? The truth about avoidant exes. What if the person you loved the most suddenly vanished? Not in body, but in presence. The late-night texts, the inside jokes, the warmth in their eyes, all gone. They didn't leave with a dramatic goodbye. No, they just started pulling away little by little, until you were left questioning if it was all in your head. You try to reach them, but their responses are cold, distant, almost robotic. It's like they built a wall overnight, one you weren't invited behind. Now you're stuck wondering, should I wait for them to come back? Or is it time to finally let go? This is the cruel reality of being entangled with an avoidant ex. It's not that they don't feel, it's that their feelings scare them. As Warren Buffett once said, chains of habit are too light to be felt until they are too heavy to be broken. The cycle of push and pull they create isn't about you, it's about them. But here's the harsh truth. Waiting for an avoidant to suddenly transform into a secure, loving partner is like waiting for a ship at the airport. It's not coming. Yet we wait. We analyze their every move, searching for signs of hope. A late night, "How have you been?" message feels like a breakthrough. A breadcrumb of attention sends our heart racing. But is it real, or is it just a moment of their own loneliness? As Tony Robbins says, if you do what you've always done, you'll get what you've always gotten. If they left you in emotional limbo before, why would the outcome be any different this time? Avoidants live in a paradox. They crave love, yet fear intimacy. They pull you close, then push you away. And if you don't understand the game, you'll keep playing their role of emotional stability, waiting for them to be ready. But let's be clear, waiting is a choice, and sometimes it's a choice that steals years from your life. You see, when you keep waiting, you put your own power in their hands. You tell yourself that their return will validate your worth. But validation never comes from someone who fears connection. It comes from within. As Maya Angelou famously said, never make someone a priority when all you are to them is an option. If you have to beg for their presence, they were never really yours to begin with. So, what do? You stop hoping for a version of them that only exists in your imagination. You stop thinking that if you just say the right words, show enough patience, or prove your love, they'll finally change. People don't change because we want them to. They change when they decide to. And that decision, it has nothing to do with you. Here's what will happen when you let go. The silence you once feared will become your greatest ally. It will no longer be a punishment. It will be proof of your strength. And the moment you stop waiting is the moment you start living again. As Steve Jobs said, your time is limited, so don't waste it living someone else's life. This video will reveal the raw truth about avoidant exes. Why they leave, why they return, and whether they ever truly change. By the end, you'll have absolute clarity on whether to move on or hold on. But be warned. The truth might not be what you want to hear. It's what you need to hear if you're ready to reclaim your power. Type this in the comments. I choose me. Because that's exactly what you need to do. Now let's dive in. Stay focused. The first thing you know before deciding if you should move on or wait is that avoidants don't leave because they stop caring. They leave because they fear intimacy. One of the biggest misconceptions about avoidant exes is that their emotional distance means they never cared about you. That's not always true. Many avoidants do feel deep emotions, but the closer they get to someone, the more they panic. They associate intimacy with a loss of control, and instead of embracing love, they retreat. Psychologist John Bowlby, the father of attachment theory, explained that avoidants develop this pattern as a defense mechanism. Maybe they grew up in an environment where vulnerability was punished, or they had past experiences that taught them that love equals pain. To them, distance feels safer than connection. So, when they pull away, it's not necessarily because they've lost feelings. It's because their fear of closeness is greater than their desire to stay. And this is where many people get trapped. You assume their departure is about you, when in reality it's about them. But here's the kicker. No amount of waiting, loving, or proving yourself will make them suddenly feel safe. They have to confront their own fears, and that's something only they can do. The question is, how long are you willing to wait for someone who may never be ready? So, should you move on or wait? If they haven't shown a willingness to face their fear of intimacy, waiting won't fix it. Love alone isn't enough to change an avoidant. They have to do the work themselves. If they're not actively trying, the best thing you can do is move on. Key point 2. Avoidants come back. But not for the reason you think. Just when you've started to heal, when you've finally accepted their absence, they reappear. A simple, "Hey, how have you been?" can throw you right back into emotional confusion. But before you get your hopes up, let's be clear. Avoidants don't return because they've changed. They return because they feel your absence. Avoidants operate in cycles. They push you away when they feel overwhelmed, but once enough time passes, they start to feel the loss. It's not necessarily because they miss you, but because they miss the comfort of knowing you were always there. They want to feel connected, but only on their terms. Just close enough to relieve their own loneliness, but never close enough to form a real commitment. This is why many avoidants engage in breadcrumbing, giving just enough attention to keep you emotionally hooked, but never enough to build a stable relationship. As the famous author Robert Greene says in The 48 Laws of Power, the moment you accept a gift, you become indebted to the giver. When you accept their return without real change, you fall right back into their cycle of control. So before you respond to that late-night text or random check-in, ask yourself, are they coming back because they truly want to grow, or just because they don't want to lose their emotional safety net? If their return is just about soothing their own loneliness and not about real change, moving on is the best choice. Pay attention to why they're coming back, not just the fact that they did. Key point 3. Avoidants don't fear losing you. They fear losing control. It's easy to believe that if your avoidant ex comes back, it must mean they've realized your worth. But here's the brutal truth. Avoidants don't fear losing you. They fear losing their grip on the dynamic. When you were fully invested, texting first, initiating plans, trying to break through their walls, they had the upper hand. They knew they could push you away and still expect you to be there when they decided to return. But when you finally step back, stop chasing, and shift your focus to yourself, that's when they start to panic. Not because they're afraid of losing your love, but because they're afraid of losing control over the situation. This is why avoidants often return just as you're moving on. They sense the change in energy. They realize you're no longer emotionally available for them to lean on when it's convenient. As author Mark Manson puts it, the only way to win the game is to stop playing. So the real question isn't whether they care about you. It's whether their return is motivated by genuine change or just a desire to maintain the familiar dynamic. And if it's the latter, ask yourself, are you willing to be someone's emotional crutch again? If they're only coming back because they sense you slipping away and not because they've genuinely changed, then moving on is the only way to break free from the cycle. You deserve someone who values you, not someone who only wants you when they think they're losing control. Key point 4. Your absence hurts more than your presence ever did. Here's something avoidants never expect, that you will actually leave. They assume you'll always be there, waiting, hoping, analyzing every little sign that they still care. But when you finally break the cycle and go silent, truly silent, that's when they start to feel the weight of their own choices. The philosopher Blaise Pascal once said, "All of humanity's problems stem from man's inability to sit quietly in a room alone. Avoidants distract themselves to avoid emotional depth. But when you remove yourself from their world, they are left to face their own emptiness. And that's not a comfortable place for them to be. They may not show it, but deep down, they notice your absence. The good morning texts that no longer come, the reassurance they once had that you'd always be there, it all disappears. Suddenly, they're left alone with their thoughts, and that silence is deafening. But here's what you need to understand. Just because they feel your absence doesn't mean they'll change because of it. This is where many people make the mistake of breaking no contact too soon. They assume that if their avoidant ex is feeling the loss, they must be learning their lesson. But avoidants don't process emotions like secure people do. They won't suddenly have an epiphany and rush back ready to love you the way you deserve. If they do return, it's often just to relieve their discomfort, not to truly change. So instead of wondering, do they miss me? Ask yourself, does their absence feel like peace or punishment? Because that answer tells you everything you need to know. Key point 5. Waiting for them to change will keep you stuck. Hope is a powerful thing, but in the wrong hands, it can be a trap. One of the biggest reasons people struggle to move on from avoidant exes is the belief that one day they will change. That one day they will wake up and realize what they lost. But here's the truth. Waiting for potential keeps you stuck in a cycle of disappointment. As best-selling author Dr. Henry Cloud says, we change our behavior when the pain of staying the same becomes greater than the pain of changing. But for most avoidants, the discomfort of emotional intimacy outweighs the pain of losing relationships. They don't experience breakups the same way you do. While you grieve the loss and seek closure, they suppress, distract, and detach. And here's the kicker. If they ever do change, it won't be because you waited. It will be because they decided to face their fears and do the inner work. But that's a journey only they can take. The more you wait, the more power you give away. Instead of waiting for them to change, ask yourself, what would my life look like if I focused on healing instead of hoping? Key point 6. Their return is not the closure you think it is. It's tempting to believe that if an avoidant ex comes back, it means you finally have answers. But the truth is, most avoidants return not to give closure, but to reopen a door they never fully closed. Avoidants rarely offer clear explanations for why they left in the first place. Their exits are often vague, cold, and filled with mixed signals. Then, when they come back, they expect you to pick up where you left off, without any accountability or real change. And because you never got closure, their return can feel like an opportunity to finally understand what went wrong. But here's what you need to know. Real closure doesn't come from them. It comes from you. As psychologist Dr. Ramani Durvasula says, closure isn't something you get, it's something you create. If you keep waiting for them to give you the perfect explanation or apology, you'll be waiting forever. Instead of seeing their return as proof of love, see it for what it really is, a test to see if you've truly moved on. When you stop seeking closure from them, you reclaim your power. And when you reclaim your power, their return no longer matters. Key point 7. Moving on is the only way to win. Avoidants operate in emotional games, push and pull, hot and cold, giving just enough to keep you hooked, but never enough to fully commit. And the only way to win that game? Stop playing. The moment you stop waiting, stop hoping, stop feeding their cycle, you take back control of your own life. You shift the focus from them to you. And that is when real healing begins. As Will Smith once said, stop letting people who do so little for you control so much of your mind, feelings, and emotions. Your avoidant ex may have once held power over your emotions, but you get to decide if they continue to. And the best way to regain control, by moving forward without them. This isn't about revenge, silence, or proving a point. It's about reclaiming your own happiness. Because at the end of the day, the best version of you isn't the one waiting for someone to choose you. It's the one who chooses themselves. So if you're ready to truly let go, type this in the comments. I release what no longer serves me. Because once you do that, the only direction left is forward. At the end of the day, you have two choices. Stay trapped in their cycle, hoping for change that may never come, or break free and reclaim your power. The truth about avoidant exes is simple. They won't change unless they choose to. And you don't have time to wait for someone who isn't ready to love you the way you deserve. Remember what Maya Angelou said, when someone shows you who they are, believe them the first time. If they've shown you that they fear commitment, that they run at the first sign of emotional closeness, why keep giving them a second, third, or fourth chance? Instead of asking, will they ever come back? Start asking, do I even want them back? Because that's where your real power lies. If this video resonated with you, if you're ready to stop waiting and start choosing yourself, here's what to do next. Hit the like button if you're ready to move forward. Subscribe for more eye-opening relationship insights. Comment below. I choose me. Say it. Own it. Live it. And if you want to go deeper into healing and self-growth, consider joining our Ace Wisdom family by becoming a channel member. Let's break the cycle together. Now take a deep breath. You're not losing them. You're finding yourself. And that's the greatest victory of all. See you in the next video.